Sometimes it often appears that we do get away with our acts of disobedience. That sometimes things that we do that are sinful and contrary to God's will, that are rebellious in nature, and we live in it for a time, eventually we may get to thinking, well, nothing bad's happened to me thus far. I guess I'm scot-free. But you need to understand that our God is no earthly father. As wonderful as our earthly fathers may be in offering discipline when necessary, our earthly fathers are not omniscient. They're not all seeing, they're not all knowing, but our heavenly Father is. And even when we think that we have gotten away with something, you need to understand that ultimately God's judgment will come upon us if we do not have that sin atoned for, if we do not seek God's forgiveness. Our God will demonstrate and will exhibit divine destruction and judgment upon those who oppose Him. Listen, friend, you may think you can get away with it, but in the end, God knows and God will deal with you. Eventually, our disobedience catches up with us. But listen, that's not true of those chosen of God, just so you know. Yes, we may experience God's reprimand, but we will not ultimately experience His divine destruction. Because when we're chosen of God, there's a second truth that I want to see in this text, and that is, even though we also escape divine destruction, even better than that, we experience divine restoration. Divine restoration. In verse 23, we've read a portion of it already, we see that the message that was at first delivered in a negative sense to Zerubbabel now makes a positive turn here as it's directed to him as Judah's political leader. Now remember, what's significant about Zerubbabel? Zerubbabel, along with the rest of Judah at this point, have received well the prophecy and the reprimand of the Lord that they get back focused upon God. And so Zerubbabel is doing what a lot of his predecessors had not been faithful in doing. Unlike many of his predecessors, Zerubbabel actually embraced the Lord in His Word. And so Zerubbabel had turned back to the Lord, and because of this, you get the sense that the Lord is offering a promise of restoration here to him. Look at verse 23. He says, "On that day, declares the Lord of hosts, I will take you, O Zerubbabel, my servant, the son of Shealtiel, declares the Lord, and make you like a signet ring, for I have chosen you, declares the Lord of hosts." Zerubbabel would have looked around and saw the nations of the world and all of how they've been living it up and seeing the great blessings come upon them. While they lived in disobedience to God, they seemed to be blessed of the Lord. Meanwhile, Judah, in its insignificant place, seemed to be struggling just to catch up, not even close to the glory that it once had experienced. And yet the Lord comes to Zerubbabel, and He says to Zerubbabel, "You're my chosen one. I'm going to take you and put you on like a signet ring. In other words, I'm going to restore you. I'm going to bring you back around. It looks bad now, but you're going to receive it yet again." Whereas destruction is the main idea in this first section. You're seeing a positive turnaround. This restoration idea becomes the prevailing concept here in the second part. And of significance is the idea and his interest in a signet ring. I'm not going to be able to get this off. Yes, I am. I wear a signet ring sometimes. This particular signet ring I received it after I had graduated from seminary, got my master's degree. And it's not your typical class ring. It is a signet ring. Well, you can't see it, but the idea of a signet ring is that it is the information is not so much on the outside, but it's embedded almost like a seal on the top side. You see demonstrated before you on the screen a signet ring from ancient history. And this is much what the signet ring would have looked like that God was referring to as He was speaking to Zerubbabel. The word that is translated as signet ring can also be translated as seal. And a signet ring would have been taken by the person who used it and would have used it to press into wax or to clay, and the emblem that was on the ring was sort of like a signature. And it would have been impressed, and it would have dried there, and it would have been like someone saying, "This is mine, I own it." In fact, the seal typically signified royal ownership or authority, or even personal authority. As a married person, I wear a ring that we call a wedding band. My wife wears one that's similar to it, unique to her, this is unique to me. But these wedding bands signify, if you will, a commitment, but also they signify ownership. When someone looks at my wife's hand and they see that band on her hand, it says to people that see it, she is owned by someone. Now you'll note that I'm wearing one too, which means she owns me, okay? It's a mutual kind of thing there. But the idea is a connection, a ownership, a choice has been made. Haggai's use of the signet ring is quite intentional, because the same imagery was used in another place in another prophet's writings in the book of Jeremiah. Listen to this. Jeremiah chapter 22, verse 24. It says, "As I live, declares the Lord, though Coniah, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, with a signet ring on my right hand, yet," and here's where it turns negative, "yet I would tear you off and give you into the hand of those who seek your life, into the hand of those of whom you're afraid, even into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of Chaldeans." Now, it's significant, this Coniah, who says that he's, as a signet ring, is going to be ripped off the finger. Coniah was Zerubbabel's grandfather. Coniah had disobeyed God, lived disobedient against him. He basically was told by God, because of his disobedience, that if he were a signet ring, he's just going to take him off his hand. Ownership no longer belongs, and then hand him over to the king of Babylon. This was a message of judgment. And so Zerubbabel would have known about that story of his grandfather, about being like a signet ring taken off the hand of God. And with that in the background of his mind, then Haggai comes along and makes this statement in verse 23 to Zerubbabel about being the grandson of Coniah's grandson. He says, "Zerubbabel, I will take you, my servant, the son of Shealtiel, declares the Lord, and make you like a signet ring." You see the idea of restoration here? Your forebears walked away from me. They left me, and like a signet ring, I took them off. But Zerubbabel, you're walking circumspectly with me. You're walking rightly with me. You're seeking to obey my word. And as a result, I'm putting you back on. It's the idea here of restoration. The Lord has taken him and chosen him for this. And if it's not clear to this point, God clearly tells him, "For I have chosen you, declares the Lord of hosts." Whereas the previous leadership in Judah had been rejected by God, Zerubbabel has been chosen of God, chosen for restoration.